What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Jake Rohde. We are here to do the pick show for TrueDFS. Rohde, great to have you as always. I know it hasn't been the quite the season you wanted, but you had some good spots, and I finally had like a good week last week. I 6x my investment on a small volume, but still it was a nice return. And been on a little bit of a winning streak, so I'm looking to keep it going this week. How are you doing today? And what are your sort of initial thoughts on the slate?
We got a few more games now, right? They've been kind of like around 10 games. Now we're up to 12, I think, this week. We don't have the Chargers to talk about this week, but there's still a lot of good games I think we can target. I think the ownership will be spread around a little bit this week. And it should be a good week.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I just pulled up. We're going to be using shout out to Roto Grinders. For what it's worth, guys, we do have our own optimal that we're building, and it's actually working for like single lineups, but we're actually able to get it up to 150. We're just trying to work out some of the kinks in the programming, but it's coming along. So we should have that, knock on wood, within a few weeks, at least some version of it. I mean, we have a version of it already up, but we'll have a better version, I guess, every week, I should say. And then this may not be as robust, but it'll have the most important categories, and it'll factor in all the ownerships throughout the industry and all that. But in the meantime, we're going to be using Roto Grinders, Lineup HQ, and shout out to them for doing a great job and really building an incredible system here. And having said everything, like all that, usually we start off with the games. I guess I'll go first and just say the games that I'm targeting. I'm going to go back to what was good to me last week and play. Mostly, it's not the game really. It's really just Buffalo. There's some run backs in there, but I don't feel crazy about any of them. I really like the Allen to Diggs again. I think that Dallas and KC is hard to ignore. That's obviously the chalky one, but I like it. Arizona, Seattle, and Green Bay, Minnesota. Those are my big games where I'll have a lot of my stuff going. What do you think about those? And then which ones are you targeting?
Yeah, I like that Allen and Diggs. I had one last week on DK that worked out pretty good there. I just missed out on a couple pieces in that one. It would look pretty decent.
Yeah.
You can go back to, I think that Green Bay, Minnesota game. Another one I like. The Bengals are back on the slate. They've been at a bye week last week. I don't mind that game. I think that could be a good late game to target. We're still unsure on the Arizona game, whether Murray plays. We know we got Russell back. So that game I don't think the defense is very good, Seattle. So that game could be a decent game if Seattle gets their stuff together. I know that Seattle Green Bay kind of made some people mad last week that we targeted that a little bit. It was pretty low scoring.
The weather got in the way though, too. I mean,
yeah, there was some weather issues. It was kind of cold. It was getting, snowing before early and during the game, rain ish, so I think we can go back to Green Bay and Seattle this week to get a little different in those stacks. That KC and Dallas game is going to be a good one too, for sure. I think might be the best on the slate.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, as we go through positions, we're going to like the quarterbacks for most of what we're doing here. Like Derek Carr actually is showing up as the highest owned or one of the highest owned plays on in that game, in that Vegas Cincinnati game, which I think is a good game to target. Don't know if I'm going to go with the Carr myself. Personally, this Cam Newton thing is wild. It's wild, man. I don't think I can do it, but it's 5.1. It's kind of appealing, but mostly it's going to be Mahomes. It's going to be Josh Allen for me on the high end. I do like Burrow in that middle tier. A little bit of interest in Dak, but I think I prefer to play the Mahomes side. The only thing is Dak is going to be so much lower owned. And then even as a game that I don't love, but I like just playing Lamar at Chicago here. I think he could have a monster week. And I don't mind running it back with like a Montgomery or something like that. So I could see getting a little bit involved in that one as well. Anybody quarterback wise who aren't in the game stacks we mentioned, Rodgers also, I said before, but I do like Rodgers to Devonte Adams as a potential here. I don't love that I'm paying up at quarterback. My strategy last week and in general, last week other than my Josh Allen lineups, was to try to pay down. But I'm not loving the spend downs at chalk with Cam and Carr enough. And I think that you're going to see 30 plus from somebody this week. And I want to try and get that guy. I know some people are going to play Tua. Who else are you looking at?
I mean, I haven't been doing usually on football, like a lot of it been popular to do the spend downs, these 5.9s, these 5.1s, these 5.5s, even Grapple is popping against Jacksonville there. But I mean, I really like these ceilings on some of these other guys, these higher up guys. We really don't know what we're going to get from Kyler, but Rodgers at 7K can give you 4 touchdowns. You know, you get Dak at 7.2 against the KC game. I don't know. He's only said 4% ownership, but I mean, that's a great spot. KC's not looked good at all. CD had a big game. You can get in on that. Is he gonna? I don't know if he's gonna play. He's questionable, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming he probably plays, but I'm not
Yeah.
100%
I,
on it,
I
obviously.
just wanted to make sure I didn't say a guy that was out and look like an idiot, but
No, no, no.
you got Josh Allen. He's the highest priced guy, but you could play that game in a couple different angles. You run it with Diggs, and then you got, Taylor's been a beast on the other side lately, and I like Buffalo's defense, but if you're playing that game and you're going to play Allen, you got to have someone that scores on Indy. Pittman's been the guy. Burrow at 6.6 ain't bad. We talked about that. Mahomes at 7.6. One of these guys goes off for 30. I tend to not play Lamar, but I mean, he's in a good matchup there, low ownership. This might be a week to get on him. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of options. I think it'll be a little bit spread out. You can see some 3 to 4% ownership on a lot of these guys. And then you got the 4 guys that are heavy ownership, but I think that changes a little bit going into Sunday too. So.
No, I hear you. I really like the. I don't know if I agree about the Buffalo needing a run back ever. I mean, they had Josh Allen out there throwing the ball 2 Diggs up by 40 in the fourth quarter last week.
Yeah, I didn't run it back last week. I had the Josh Allen to Diggs, and then on the FanDuel I had Beasley and Sanders, which didn't work out. Unfortunately, I wish I went Diggs to Allen on both sites. I would have been fine, but I didn't run it back last week for what it's worth.
Well, it's going to transfer me. Let's transition into running back because I do have interest in Naheem Hines as a run back in that game potentially.
You do that.
You could see him getting the pass game work if Buffalo is controlling it. Let's say you get them controlling with the passing game, and maybe you get a rushing touchdown hopefully from Allen. I think Naheem Hines at 4,300, he can put up 15, 20 fantasy points, and he's cheap enough to where he's just semi-viable. He's not like my favorite guy. I'm just mentioning him because that I thought was an interesting run back. I just thought T.Y. Hilton, if he's healthy, is interesting. But I like a little bit of the chalk this week at running back, but not all of it. I still think Darrell Williams is too cheap. A.J. Dillon getting the full work is hard to ignore. I'm just going through the guys who are going to be owned. I'm going to be below the field on Swift again. I'm going to be below the field on James Conner again. I'm going to be above the field on Myles Gaskin. I will be I'm assuming you're going to be with me on the Christian McCaffrey where we can get him in ahead of the field. Same with David Montgomery. I'm going to be ahead of the field. I'll be below. I like the matchup for Chubb and everything he's going, but I'm not going to play him at 7,800. I don't think. I'm not going to play Michael Carter that as of right now. I mean, I obviously could change. I'm not playing Dalvin. I'm not playing Jacobs, and I'm not playing that much Dalvin Cook. Have we heard officially? Let me just double check and make sure that I'm not crazy and didn't do the same thing you were worried about. I am going to love Alvin Kamara if he's in, and I hope that he's in, and I think he could go off. If not, we can go back to Ingram, but I think that's interesting. And I think that I hate taking running backs against Carolina in general, but this is too cheap for Antonio Gibson. He's you can see the work he got last week. 24 carries helped him with that drive, and that's against as much as I hate taking running backs against Carolina, I really hate taking running backs against Tampa Bay. And Antonio Gibson at 5,900, looking like he's going to be overlooked because the guys around him in his price range. I don't see any big difference except for that he's a better player than they are. So I love the idea of playing maybe a Gibson and a Dillon together, something like that. In my big buy-ins. I think that's sort of what I'm leaning to. What do you like this week at running back?
Yeah, I definitely don't mind a lot of those calls. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is a guy, he's getting some ownership this week. Last week he could have had a monster game. I don't know,
Oh my God, man. He could have
we just sat there and we're watching I'm watching Red Zone, and he's just getting vultured left and right, man. I'm like, this guy would have 3 touchdowns and a massive game.
If the game was close too, maybe he gets a 100-yard bonus for both. He might have gotten 100 of each.
I mean, the guy just got touchdowns taken from him on the one, like nothing. I mean, he had a 40-point game at least.
Yep.
And, it's just crazy to watch. I always like my man, AJ Dillon. He's been looking good this year.
Mhm.
He's on Green Bay. I don't mind that game. I really like that game. That's a good secondary correlation too. I think you'll probably get low ownership on like a Justin Jefferson. He's a little priced up now. He's been having some big games.
Mhm.
You got Adam Thielen to go with him, but Dylan I like. Um, let's see, you got Mix in there. He's getting some lower ownership. We've tended he's a little higher price. We tended to play him a little bit. I'm
Mhm.
sorting by value by price on mine. So I'm kind of going through some of these guys.
Here,
Michael
I'll do
Carter
it.
does pop a little bit more. I know you weren't playing him, but he's high owned. So that's not a bad fade for a guy that's high owned. I don't
Yeah,
mind that.
I feel if I just instead of Carter or Williams, even though I'm gonna have some Williams in my stacks, if I just play Antonio Gibson, I'm just getting so. I mean, would it surprise any of us if I actually think that Antonio Gibson has every bit as high of upside as these guys do, if not higher. So I'm happy to for everybody else to eat these other guys up, and that's sort of how I feel about the Kamara versus Cook and McCaffrey. I feel like if Kamara is in, he's going to be completely overlooked for his price, and we've seen that the Eagles this year have really struggled at times with the running game. So and pass catching back. So I like that. I like that him as my spend up. But and then you got Montgomery's another guy you could pair with Gibson if you wanted to go double cheap. I just think there's ways you can do it with using one popular guy and one guy who's not going to be owned, and that's going to be Gibson right now.
Yeah, I like Gibson. I've been high on him all year. I know he's been kind of injured. So it's kind of been off him because of the injury a little bit. Kamara, I do like as well. But I'm worried about him still questionable. I haven't followed up with the injury on him yet, whether he's limited at all. They got Mark Ingram still, but right. I mean, he's not
Ingram's
projected
still
very
there.
good.
There's reasons to people, but if they say he's a full go, I think you'll see him pretty
Yeah,
involved.
and we didn't mention that game, but Devonte Smith on the other side for receiver in that game is another way you could pair Kamara and Smith.
Mhm.
Smith's actually had 2 back-to-back weeks of 22.6 fantasy points. I know it's kind of odd. It's the same.
Yeah.
Not that it matters. It's not like huge ceiling. He's a little priced up this week. He'd need to get towards 30 to be more viable for a ceiling game now than his 22. But I mean, Hertz has been putting up some points early, and he's only 6'8". So if you want to do a mini stack of it, get different or get weird, and
Mhm.
then fill in some chalk around it, I mean, there's some options right there for you. A low and stack
Yeah.
combination.
Yeah, no one's going to play Smith. It's an incredibly tough matchup for him against the guy whose name I forget every single week, the cornerbacks for New Orleans.
Yeah.
But I still think he's kind of interesting. Let's
But
transition. Go ahead.
yeah, New Orleans hasn't looked that great on defense overall. I mean, they've had some good games and some bad games.
I think the bad games had more to do with their offense not moving the ball. Personally,
Yeah, their offense has been a struggle, I think.
and,
So it's hard to
and
factor.
they've still done a good job against number one wide receiver one. So that's sort of what I was factoring in. But let's transition over to receiver, because I think this is where you're going to be able to get things different. Like, again, you get Diggs in single digit ownership projected right now. You mentioned Justin Jefferson, another one you can go with. I probably am going to side with, Kelsey over Hill this week. I like Hill too, but I probably am going to have more Kelsey. I actually think double tight end is viable this week because there's some tight ends with some real upside. And then Devonte is going to be high owned, and I think he's a terrific play. He's going to be high owned. We just have to remember that. But I really like Diggs against the secondary that I really don't trust, and he's probably my favorite of the big time spend ups. I love DK Metcalf this week. I am going to be all over that play. It's 6,800 and no low ownership. I'll be into that. If Hopkins plays at 6,500, this is the range I'm probably going to find myself in. I like Cooper at 6,200. I like DJ Moore, but he's going to be pretty popular at 5,900. Just too cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the range I'm sort of finding. What are you looking at this week in terms of receivers? And I'll talk about value after you go.
Yeah, I kind of like those receivers you mentioned. It's going to be hard. I mean, I'm a big fan of DK Metcalf. I really like that. I mean, Jamar Chase at 7.2, he's explosive in the game we talked about. I know Derek Carr will be popular,
Yep.
like a Derek Carr Waller with Jamar Chase run back type thing might be a little popular. Diggs is a lower owned option. He's a little priced up. I think you can go there. I don't mind that. I mean, T. Higgins is going to be chalky. He's projecting well. Devonte is obviously the number one guy, but if you pair him with Justin Jefferson at a low owned combo, you can get a Rodgers to Devonte with Justin run back fairly lower on the ownership, but you're going to have to find some value plays in there, like a value receiver and a couple of value running backs. But we talked about a lot of them. We talked about some cheap 5-6K running backs there, even Hines in that game. You like these at 4-3. So you guys compare some of these guys up and get really different. DJ Moore is going to be hard to get off at 5-9 with his workload in that game. That's another nice secondary correlation. More to Gibson. You know, that game stays close. Michael Gallup, I'm always on. He's getting some ownership at 4-2. He didn't really go up in his price. I mean, he had some targets last week too, right? 5 targets he got.
And they blew him out. He would have had more. He didn't play the fourth quarter. Basically, the whole team didn't play the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so I don't mind going back to him again. I think that game's going to be close and high scoring. Yeah. If Cowboys can keep, I mean, Casey's looking a little bit better lately, but if that game can be a shootout, I mean, you might want some pieces in that game, guys. I'm thinking some of the receivers you compare, you know, receiver to receiver, Hill and Gallup and Kelsey, Cooper. You talked about. I didn't see CD on here. What's his price at?
76. So my first build was Gallup. Was Gallup and Gallup and why can't I think of his name right now? The guy, 6,200 receiver. Why can't I think of
Cooper?
Mark Cooper.
Yeah.
With Kelsey as the tight end. You know, and then you could play Hardman at 4,200 or whatever. It's weird though, because it always feels like with the other receivers for KC that it could be any of them, whether it be Pringle or Hardman or whatever. But you're not going to get any ownership on Hardman this week. So I'm interested in taking some shots on some of these unknown guys in those games. I really like, you mentioned Devonte Smith. I love Quez Watkins. That's what I would do, is take the secondary receiver against New Orleans. He's 3,900 and getting work, and he gets some shots too downfield. So he's one of my favorites. Marcus Johnson's going to be really popular. And I like it, but I think at 3,500, you know, we could go a different direction with a couple other guys. And I do like Marcus Johnson. He makes more sense than maybe some of these other guys do, but I really don't think I don't love the 20% owned guy. So I'd rather take a little lower ownership on Gallup, pay a little more, play Watkins at half the ownership. I think Laviska Shenault is in play, which doesn't feel great, but I'm looking to spend down in one spot. And mostly it's going to be Gallup, Hardman, Watkins, maybe Marcus Johnson if the rest of my lineup isn't chalky. Tyler Boyd's cheap, but I really like T. Higgins, who's also cheap at 5,400. We mentioned Moore at 5,900. Waddle's projecting really well for a lot of people. Who are you sort of leaning towards that you would go with the value guys?
Well, I mean, you didn't say Lockett right there at 6K. I mean, he's been a popular favorite of Russell before Russell got hurt. I mean, he was getting a lot of balls for 6K value on Lockett. He's getting some ownership though. That's probably why you should just play DK for only $800 more. I know those guys aren't values, but those are kind of, I just want to make that clear.
They're values considering where they're usually priced at. They're cheaper than they're not usually this cheap.
Yeah.
I love Brandon Cooks also, who's really popular, but I do like Brandon Cooks. Sorry, go ahead.
Did you like to do, you said Gallup and Amari. Did you like to have play Dak in that stack over like a Mahomes Kelsey? Like do like Gallup and Amari and run it back with Kelsey type thing? Or
I did it both ways. I did it Mahomes with Hardman and Kelsey and Gallup and Amari. But I also ran it the other way, and then I just took out Hardman and played Watkins. That was my initial plan on that.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, Watkins is popping pretty close. I mean, he's got 10% ownership here, it looks like. Gallup's at 12. So I mean, they're getting owned, they're getting looked at, but those are two value plays that I really like this week. I'm not seeing much down here. I mean, you can go back to Emanuel Sanders at 5.3. I mean, it's a little. He had a couple big games earlier in the season. He's kind of fizzled out lately, but he's getting target. I mean, he had a lot of targets before he got hurt last game. So he's getting around 6 to 8 targets a game. So at 5.3, you can go back to that. I think that's going to be a good game to target. Nicole Beasley's in that same category, gets a lot of work. They were getting a lot of work before Diggs at a big game. So, you know, those are guys. Hunter Renfro's right there too. to mention, 5'8", and he's not quite the value, but he's kind of the head guy. Everyone knows what happened there, but he's kind of, I mean, obviously Waller's the head guy, but Renfro's been getting a lot more work, and Edwards in that team over
I
Waller.
like Edwards. What about Edwards
Yeah.
at 4,100? Why are we not talking more about
That might be another option we can go.
Yeah.
I don't see him on my projection. Man, some of these guys are projected really bad.
But they're projected poorly, but so what, man? I don't
No,
need
I don't disagree. I usually don't have to dig on this list so far, though.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, I know.
Edwards isn't that bad. I mean, he's around the Gallup projection and
Yeah.
Hardman projection and the 8 to 9 point projection for fantasy.
I mean, he's got 4 double-digit games this year, and now
he does have a good value rating, so that's pretty good at 4-1. So,
yeah.
And I like that game, guys. You can stack it up to get different. I love Burrow this week. Take Burrow and a couple pass catchers and run it back with like Edwards or Renfro or Waller, whatever you kind of want to do there in that game. If you're MMEing or something,
Yep.
you know, I don't mind something like that. And Carr's going to be chalky, so it's weird that his receiving options aren't that chalky when he's chalky. So
it's going to be Waller.
I think in Waller's mostly, yeah.
But that's why I'm saying it's a double tight end week, and maybe we transition over to tight end now because I actually like Uzoma for Cincinnati this week a little bit. And that's not that's a play no one's going to play. And we've seen the ceiling from this guy before. I mean, we've seen big games from him. He put up 24 and 26 and a half. What was that? 28.
Looks like he's due for a game if you're going by that game log.
Yeah, go by the game log and say he's due for sure.
The next one should be another 20.
Yeah. But these guys aren't going to be on it. I actually think double tight end might be a good way to go. I like Waller a lot. I like Goddard a lot. I'm open to Everett. I'm not going to play Dan Arnold, and I'm going to be way over the field on George Kittle. I just don't understand how we're not like, I want to play this guy as much as I can get a chance to. I just think he's one of the best players in football. And if I can play a Kittle Kelsey lineup as my tight ends, and you see even Kelsey's ownership sub 10%, you can really just be different by playing the 2 best tight ends in football. Or you could include Waller and then just have one of the cheap, one of the guys who's low on. I just really like that, the spending up at tight end, or if I don't, to go down to Uzoma, who I personally have a little bit ahead of Gerald Everett, given the matchups and the fact that the ownership's going to be non-existent on Uzoma. How about you?
Yeah, I think Tyler Conklin in that Minnesota Green Bay game on my projections, he's getting a little bit more love. And he's only 3.3% ownership, so that's not bad. Dan Arnold again, but he's chalky. He's getting a lot of looks in the red zone. Gerald Everett's right there too. People like Cole Kmet. It looks like 6% ownership in that game, but I don't really think we need to go there. You always got Gesicki at low owned if you want to get in that game. I kind of could go there 5-2 if you want to pay, but you might as well pay up this week. I think I do like the Kittle call. He's looked great coming back. He's been kind of getting the ball dumped off on him a lot, which is good. You want that extra work, where he's getting the ball, quick out to him.
Because some rushing upside also too. He'll get, like he had how many?
The little inside dive thing.
Yeah, they'll do that near the goal line quite a bit.
Yeah.
When he's healthy. So
there's that option, So I like that. I think Kelsey's came down from price from earlier this season when I think he started at 8K or so. So 7-1, he's been hovering around. He's had a couple better games lately. He still has some ceiling to go, I think. That's a good shootout game. It could be a 3-touchdown game for one of those guys, Hill or Kelsey, in my opinion. So I think mixing and matching those guys is what you kind of want to do. I like Kittle. Waller really hasn't had a big game. He's been my favorite of the year, but after the week 1, 19 targets, he's kind of not done much, guys.
Yeah.
So I haven't really been on him as much as I've been in the past. Last year I was on him very heavy. He actually could have won me a lot of money last year. I got 4th in the sweep with his 7 points last year. It kind of pissed me off a little bit. Because he one more catch, couple more catches. I was only lost by a few points, so that was a tight week. But yeah, and he did also win me a lot of money because he had a couple weeks later he had a monster game when he really got put on the page. So I always like Waller. He's in my dynasty league. I'm not gonna say don't play him, but I've just been kind of light on him this year I think Kittle and Kelsey are two options you can go with to get off of him that
Mhm.
are much better ownership, much better possible upside too for this year too as well.
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, we're kind of speeding through it because I unfortunately have to run soon. We've had a little bit of this going on lately, but let's talk about some defenses. I know it's not the most fun thing. The most logical thing to me is just, okay, if I can get it up to the Browns defense at 3,100, it's cheap enough where I want to do that. I think people are into the Carolina Washington thing. I actually was really impressed with Washington last week. That was one of the most. It was sucked for me because I needed a little more from McLaurin, but I really needed a little bit more on the other side of the any of the pass catchers for Tampa Bay, and especially Evans. And they never got the ball back because they the longest drive of the season. But I don't know if I'm as high on the Panthers. I think that Washington is the better of the two defenses. And they're 2,400. The people are going to play the Chiefs at 2,200. I'm okay with that. The Lions, anybody against Baker right now, I'll take some shots on. So I'll take some shots on the Lions defense. It was a little a little concerning last week. They had the whole time they played that game with Mason Rudolph at the quarterback. I don't think they had any sacks. Maybe they got one late or something, but no sacks. I mean, that's what scares me about playing those defenses. It's just so hard for them to get points. And then, if you want to go absolutely bottom, I would go Texans. Who else are you looking at?
Oh, man, I didn't realize how bad this was a week for defense. Just looking at it here.
Yeah.
I tend to go cheaper. Washington does look good at 2-4. I'm really not a fan of, Cam Newton there. He's been turnover prone in the past, like throws interceptions, throws pick sixes, fumbles the ball, scrambling, careless with the ball. So I don't mind that if they can get some pressure on them. So that could be a good defense. I also think the same thing about Baker with Detroit. I mean, yeah, they haven't really done well for defense, Detroit, but Baker throws a lot of picks. He throws it up in the air. He fumble. I mean, he just doesn't ever look good. I mean, so that's an option. Even the Jets against Miami is an option. The Chiefs look like they're popping a little bit against Dallas. I don't know. Dallas has had good weeks and bad weeks. Browns, I do like the Browns against Detroit. I think Detroit's really looks like a bad football team. I know Swift is getting projection this week against them, but Cleveland had a couple good weeks of defense, and they kind of let me down the one week. I think, against the Patriots last week, they just got absolutely plummeted, but they've actually got scored on quite big a few weeks, but they've also held teams some smaller scores, 6, 7, 14, so I don't know. So it's just kind of spread out this week, guys. I mean, if you want, you could even go with the Texans defense. I mean, Titans haven't, they look okay, but I don't know. Tannehill threw a pick six last week, didn't he? Or when did he throw a pick six?
I'm not sure if he did last week. I'm not 100%.
So maybe the week before.
Yeah. No, but he's definitely been prone to it in the past. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And they don't have Derrick Henry running all over him this week. I mean, so obviously we know what happened there. So maybe Houston at 2K is viable. They've been positive every week. It hasn't been huge scores. They did do well against Miami last week at 12 points. So that kind of makes me think, well, who else plays Miami this week? 2-3, the Jets do. That's an option. I'd rather maybe even go with the Texans. I don't know.
Yeah, that's sort of where I'm at as well.
I don't
I'm
know.
gonna just quickly show here's my the first builds I did, which was I think on Tuesday afternoon. So these are going to change, but this was sort of the first run at things, and we're going to change some things out. I'm going to get some Gibson in there and do a few things differently. But this was sort of the first thing I came up with, just to give you guys an idea. And I will post. I think I'll post 9 lineups, 9 different builds this week that I'll be working on as my core, and you can check that out on TrueDFS.com. I'll have all my early builds done. Of course, late news sometimes affects it, but we'll talk through that live at 11:30. Rohde, anything else in this slate we should touch on before we get out of here? And sorry to sort of rush through this one.
I mean, not really. We targeted a lot of games. I think we talked about a lot more players than we've had in the past. It just kind of went fast. We talked about spread out a little bit more with the different games, a lot of different star players to target with ceilings in those games. So try to focus on getting those guys in your builds, I think, and then trying to fit the value that's going to get usage around it. I think you can be okay. So that's kind of my take on it. Get some of those ceiling games in and that we talked about and work from there. So
I love it. And one thing I love about, I wanted to add about the Hardman or the Gallup play is that if we don't know about DeAndre Hopkins after the early slate, you can make that pivot over to Rondale Moore. If you, let's say you have Kyler, I think especially if you have Kyler, and no Hopkins, I think Rondale Moore at 42, AJ Green at 46 will become interesting. If you have no Hopkins, so you do have some pivots there that you want to try and play. And like Sheets says all the time, and said this week, if you're winning all the money and then going to the afternoon, you're probably not coming home with any victories, because these afternoon games are legit, and that is going to be where primarily stacks the Dallas KC game for me. But I do like this Arizona Seattle stuff as well. And then you've talked a lot about the Cincinnati Vegas, and those are really, really good afternoon games that we can do some work in, I think. And that's what my strategy is going to be.
Yeah, they just look like they're going to be all three competitive games from the spreads we got. So I think, we shouldn't have a huge blow on any of those games. I think if they stay close enough that you're going to get some star players, and if any of those shoot out, you're going to want some pieces on those games, I think. So for sure.
Sorry I did, for those of you watching, I edited my basketball lineup real quick because we got some late news that Yang is starting for Philly. It's not a huge deal, but I had an iffy play already with my Royce O'Neal love, but I was hoping Yang would somehow start against his former team. So I had to show that one as we win, because I didn't have time to get out of there. But I also like the double tight end. That's another thing I'm willing to do this week. So those are my big things this week. Rohde, all right, man. Thanks so much as always. Great job. You'll be with us 11:30 Eastern on Sunday.
Yeah, I should be good to go this week. So
all right. Well, let's make some money. Hopefully Sheets is feeling better by then. Get well, Sheets. And let's crush it this weekend, guys. Show us, we'll be in Discord. Show us what's happening. Rohde's been great about talking to everybody through the strategy and how, ways to go about your builds. And let's all make some money.
Let's get it, guys. Screenshots.